Hey, so you see John Lewis there. He's holding the second installment of the trilogy called March, Book Two, and it's a story of John Lewis's life and a story of his participation in the civil rights movement, which was he was clutch. He was part of King's sort of like inner circle. So he was the only one that's actually still alive from everyone who gave a speech in that 1963 Million Man March that the day Dr. King gave the "I Have a Dream" speech. So we're going to spend a little time kind of getting to know just a small excerpt of this wonderful trilogy. But I just want to show you that John Lewis, he's one of the writers of it as well, and he is holding it there in his office at the Capitol. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the an excerpt from this book. I'm going to zoom in and zoom out, so sometimes it'll be a little blurry, so you just have to bear with me. But you can kind of get an overall feel here too. Okay, so oop, does it not want me to zoom in? No, now it's frozen. Mm-hmm. Yeah, not tenable. Okay, there we are. Much better. So and it wasn't the only problem festering within the students' nonviolence committee, right? He was a college student and he spent time going to try to desegregate the South. And you see him being punched by a fist there and written on the arm that's punching him by the end of 1962, you heard people questioning whether SNCC should even be a multiracial organization. January 14th, 1963, at the Alabama State Capitol. And you see here we have what's called a automatopoeia, clup, 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 of shoes going up those hallowed steps. Then it's the inauguration of George Corley Wallace Jr., the 45th governor of Alabama. And a lot of people, and I'll show you a video of this guy, a lot of people now really consider him to be like the worst. But at the time, there was a large approval, and people said that when they wouldn't let him speak, that they were stifling free speech. Um, well, guess what? A lot of people listened and still believe the things that he was espousing. Right. So let's take a look. Today, I have stood where once Jefferson Davis stood, a slave owner, and took an oath to my people. It is very appropriate then that from this cradle of the Confederacy, those are the southern states that tried to break from the Union because they wanted to maintain slavery because it was such an essential pillar of their economic system then. The very heart of the great Anglo Saxon Southland, that today we sound the drum for freedom, as have our generations or forebears before us have done time and time again throughout history. Even as Wallace was speaking that day, Dr. King's organization, and you see the mouse up here, right? Um, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the SCLC, held a meeting to decide what to do. And then you get that information and you contrast it with this here. Let us rise to the call of freedom, loving blood that is in us, and send our answer to the tyranny that clanks its chains upon the South. They're complaining about the federal government, but of course, this is about the federal government trying to make sure that they treat the citizens of Alabama fairly, which they certainly were not. In the name of the greatest people that have ever trod this earth, I draw the line in the dust. They needed a new target. They needed a victory, as Fred Shuttlesworth put it, right? So this is sort of the voice of the movement against this guy. And they pick this guy out as a target and toss the gauntlet before the feet of tyranny. And I say, says George Wallace, the awful governor there. Oh, there go to computer. Segregation today. And while we'd made progress elsewhere, one city continued to earn its label as the most segregated city in the South, subject to so much violence that it was named Birmingham, right? So there was so much terrorist violence against Black people that the nickname for Birmingham, Alabama was Birmingham. Segregation tomorrow. Shuttlesworth made a promise that afternoon to Dr. King. I assure you, he said, if you come to Birmingham, this movement will not only gain prestige, segregation forever, but it will really shake this country. So this guy ends up being sort of the focus of the civil rights movement because he's so explicitly and awfully racist. And then it flashes ahead in time to August 28th, 1963. August 28th, 1963. Well, give it a second. It doesn't like when I zoom in sometimes and I freeze. Yeah. Let's see if I move over here and shimmy and shake a little bit. Okay, there we are. Okay. So the next morning, we had breakfast together before heading as a group to meet with the members of congressional leadership. And you can see them coming out of the room there. And there's the press, and you can see all those onomatopoeias. Right, all the cameras clicking away, and no one mentioned my speech, John Lewis's speech. The meetings were quick. Nothing substantive was discussed. Then we learned that the march had started without us. So a little behind the scenes action on the day of the Million Man March. And you can see the crowd, my God, they're going. We're supposed to be leading them. There goes and school desegregation, right? Things that we still haven't solved today. We cleared a space to take pictures, but we're not at the front of the march. Truth be told, we couldn't even see the front. And look at that panorama. Amazing. The work in this is so good. The drawing is so good. There's the Lincoln Memorial over there, on the steps of which Dr. King gave his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. But this is actually from the point of view of John Lewis, who walked and suffered and fought alongside Dr. King. As the crowds gathered, the program began with music from some truly unbelievable performers. Mahalia Jackson, Odetta, Joan Baez, and Bob Dylan, Peter, Paul, and Mary, one of my daughter's like second favorite group, the SNCC Freedom Singers. What no one saw was the drama unfolding over my speech backstage. I just don't understand, you SNCC people. You always want to be different. Mr. Wilkins, you don't understand. I'm not just speaking for myself. So this is the speech John Lewis wants to give, but they take issue with what some of the stuff he has in it. I'm speaking for my colleagues in SNCC and for the people in the Delta and the Black Belt. You haven't been there, Mr. Wilkins. You don't understand. Okay, Roy. Mr. Randolph Martin, Eugene, and I will stay out and handle this. Everybody else out. Archbishop O'Boyle, I assure you there will be no more changes. I hope that will not delay your invocation. No. John, I know who you are. I think I know you well. I don't think this sounds like you. You say you just can't say revolution or masses. It's communist talk. Alexa, stop. And there was a fear of communism, and the charge of communism was used very often against civil rights marchers as a way to sort of take attention away from the righteousness of their cause. There's nothing wrong with those two words. I've used them many times myself. And after that, we had to stop. Randolph needed to give his speech opening the official program, and by the time he returned, the last of objections had grown. Cortland Cox and I, Foreman, had heard that was happening and came to the tent to join me. What's all this? What is all this? You're going to change one word, it's going to be over my dead body. I've waited 22 years for this. I've waited my life for this opportunity. Please don't ruin it, he says to John Lewis. Finally, as the time came near, my speech came near. John, we've come this far together. Let us stay together. Okay, sir, we'll make the changes. I simply could not say no to Mr. Randolph. So he's taking the words revolution out of his speech that he wanted to leave in. In the end, my speech was no longer called the president's too little too late, nor called for a march through the heart of Dixie the way Sherman did. Sherman was someone who, at the end of the Civil War, as he marched down through the South, conquered South, he destroyed a lot of citizens' farms and stuff like that, not just soldiers and stuff. So down south, General Sherman still has a bit of a reputation as a tyrant. Of course, people who suffered at the hands of the Southern way of life and Southern point of view oftentimes don't have quite a problem with Sherman, but it was inflammatory, so they wanted John Lewis to take it out of his speech that day. But when we were finished, I was still satisfied with the speech, as were Foreman and Cox. We all agreed that our message was not compromised. Brother John Lewis, thank you. I spoke number 6 that day. Out of everyone who spoke at the march, I'm the only one still around. Alexa, stop. We march today for jobs and freedom, but we have nothing to be proud of, for hundreds and thousands of our brothers are not here. They're receiving starvation wages or no wages at all while we stand here. There are sharecroppers in the Delta of Mississippi who are out in the fields working for less than $3 a day, 12 hours a day. While we stand here, there are students in jail on trumped up charges. Our brother James Farmer, along with many others, is also in jail. We come here today with a great sense of misgiving. It's true that we support the administration's civil rights bill. We support it with great reservations, however. This is the Kennedy administration. Unless Title III is put in this bill, there's nothing to protect the young children and old women who must face police dogs and fire hoses in the South while they engage in peaceful demonstrations. In its present form, this bill will not protect the citizens of Danville, Virginia, who must live in constant fear of a police state. It will not protect the hundreds and thousands of people that have been arrested on trumped up, made up charges. What about the 3 young men, SNCC field secretaries in Americus, Georgia, who faced the death penalty for engaging in peaceful protest? As it stands now, the voting section of this bill will not help the thousands of black people who want to vote. It will not help the citizens of Mississippi, of Alabama, and Georgia who are qualified to vote but lack a 6th-grade education. One man, one vote is the African cry. It is ours too. It must be ours, says John Lewis, the 6th speaker that day. We must have legislation that will protect the Mississippi sharecropper who is put off his farm because he dares to register to vote. And we need a bill that will provide for the homeless and starving people of this nation. And we need a bill that will ensure the equality of a maid who earns $5 a week in a home of a family whose total income is $100,000 a year. We must have a good FEPC bill. My friends, let us not forget that we are involved in a serious social revolution. By and large, American politics is dominated by politicians who build their careers on immoral compromises and ally themselves with open forms of political, economic, and social exploitation. There are exceptions, of course. We salute those, but what political leader can stand up and say, my party is the party of principles? For the party of Kennedy is also the party of Eastland. The party of Javits is also the party of Goldwater. Where is our party? That's Barry Goldwater, who ended up running against Lyndon B. Johnson, who became president after President Kennedy was shot. Where is our party? Where is the political party that will make it unnecessary to march on Washington? Where is the political party that will make it unnecessary to march in the streets of Birmingham? Where's the political party that will protect the citizens of Albany, Georgia? Do you know that if Albany, Georgia, 9 of our leaders have been indicted not by the Dixiecrats but by the federal government for peaceful protests? But what do the federal government do when Albany's deputy sheriff beat attorney C.B. King and left him half dead? What did the federal government do when local police officials kicked and assaulted the pregnant wife of Slater King and she lost her baby? To those who have said, be patient and wait, we have long said we cannot be patient. We do not want our freedom gradually, but we want to be free now. We are tired. We are tired of being beaten by policemen, and we're tired of seeing our people locked up in jail over and over again. All right, I got to pause it real quick. And then you holler, be patient. How long can we be patient? We want our freedom and we want it now, and we do not want to go to jail. But we will go to jail if this is the price we must pay for love, brotherhood, and true peace. I appeal to all of you to get in this great revolution that is sweeping our nation. Get in and stay in the streets of every city, every village, every hamlet of this nation. Oh, that sounds a little bit like that piece of the I Have a Dream speech later that day. Uh, Comes until the revolution of 1776 is complete. We must get in this revolution and complete the revolution. Oh, I see. So framing it as the 1776 revolution against Britain as, just sort of updating it to include everybody. That's a great idea for that speech. So perhaps that was what they were arguing about in the tent beforehand. Excellent. For in the Delta of Mississippi, in Southwest Georgia, in the Black Belt of Alabama, in Harlem, in Chicago, Detroit, Philadelphia, and all over this nation, the black masses are on the march for jobs and freedom. They're talking about slow down and stop. We will not stop. All of the forces of Eastland, Barnett, Wallace, and Thurmond will not stop this revolution. If we do not get meaningful legislation out of this Congress, the time will come when we will not confine our marching to Washington. We will march through the South, through the streets of Jackson. So this is the part where he said they were going to march like Sherman, right? But he took that part out of the speech. So it was not incendiary. Instead was more impactful, got people to think more than react, right? It's a delicate dance for sure. Through the streets of Danville, through the streets of Cambridge, and through the streets of Birmingham, which we saw earlier was called Bombingham, right? So that's quite a prospect. But we will march with the spirit of love, with the spirit of dignity that we have shown here today. By the force of our demands, our determination, and our numbers, we shall splinter the segregated South into 1,000 pieces and put them back together in the image of God and democracy. We must say, wake up, America, wake up, for we cannot stop, and we will not and cannot be patient. Dr. King was the day's last speaker. Hold on, I'm going to pause it and try to make this a little clearer. Dr. King was the day's last speaker. He started slow. I'd heard him speak many times. His cadence was so familiar for me. Cadence is like the rhythm of which you talk. His words carried through the air like arrows, moving to a climactic refrain the world would never forget. Tell him about the dream, Martin. In those moments, Dr. King made plain all of our hopes and aspirations, everything we sought through the beatings and the blood, through the triumphs and the failures, everything we dared to imagine about a new America, a better America, in which each of God's children can live in a society that makes love its highest virtue. It's a great picture there. I like that. After the program was over, all of the speakers were invited to the White House to meet with President Kennedy. Good to see you. You did a good job. Thank you, Mr. President. I heard your speech, and you had a dream. It was the last time I saw President Kennedy alive. He would be assassinated in Dallas later. And then, okay. And then fast forward. Chief, March on Washington's Jobs and Freedom 63. I want you to see that there is not a piece of paper or any dirt or filth or anything left here. Thank you, Bayard. Right? Making sure that the march went off well, right? And was orderly. January 20th, 2009. And then we have Barack Obama. Thank you, my fellow citizens. I stand here today humbled by the task before us, grateful for the trust you have bestowed. 1022, Sunday, September 15th, 1963, Youth Sunday. Moving, and this is still Barack Obama sort of over top of this image, mindful of the sacrifices borne by our ancestors. right? And that day in September '63 happens to be the day of the bombing of the church in Birmingham, of which a fact about that is Angela Davis um, lived in a house close by, and when they bombed this church, there were children inside, and one of the shoes of the children had been exploded into the air and landed in the tree by Angela Davis's house is the story she tells. So yeah, suffering at the hands of white supremacist terrorists was definitely much more common, especially in Birmingham or Bombingham as it was known at that time. All right. I hope you enjoyed this. It is a wonderful graphic novel. Obviously, I only took a small piece from just the middle part. It's cool to get the whole story of John Lewis's life and career. But I just want to give you a taste with this video, and I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you enjoy the stuff that I gave you to do that comes with it. Be well.